This morning, I want to share a message simply entitled, Enough is Enough. Enough is Enough, as we jump into week 3 of our habit series. How many have ever had that moment when you just said, you know what, enough is enough. I can't deal with this. I can't do this any longer. Something's got to change. Something's got to give. I just can't keep going through all of this. Anyone ever been there? Maybe you've been raising kids and you're just, I can't deal with this right now, and you just lock the door to your room. Maybe I'm the only person. Maybe I just go in the bathroom, but like when Carol's in the bathroom, like little hands slide underneath the door because that's just how they do. I don't know. They don't leave moms alone. There is no escape for you. I'm sorry, moms. But dads, you just got to find a place, all right? But enough is enough. I remember when I was younger, my dad gave me a 1976 Mercury Monarch, which is just a beast of a car. It's terrible looking. I've talked about it before, but it left quite an impression upon me. But my dad was also, he probably paid a couple $100s for it, which was probably a couple $100 too much. And so he bought the car, he gave it to me, and my dad was, how do I say this? My dad was cheap, all right? Now, I've been accused of being cheap. I like to say I'm frugal, I'm thrifty, all right? We have some other terms we use for this. And he put on used tires on my 1976 Mercury Monarch. Well, I'm driving along, 6 months, a year later, I don't know, and I'm going down the freeway, and I have a blowout. And I'm on the side of the road, and I'm able to get the spare out, and I call my dad, and he comes in, and we change the tire, and we're all good, all right? Well, my dad still keeps buying these discount, used tires, and he tells me where to buy them. And so I go, and I follow through. And then the next time, I'm about an hour and a half from home, and I have another blowout. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. And this is back in the day. I know some of you all don't know what I'm about to say. You had to walk to the next exit. Just pray that there would be human beings there, because you didn't have cell phones, all right? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, some of you know what I'm talking about, all right? And so you walk there, and then I didn't have a spare tire anymore, I didn't have the jack anymore because we'd taken out last time, and I didn't put it back because I was not responsible, all right? And so I had to go call AAA, and they had to tow me back home so we could change the tire. Well, then I graduate. My dad gives me a 1967 Chevy Camaro black. It's so nice. And it got up, and it had some giddy up, all right? And I'm driving, and this time I'm going to work, and I'm in Southern Oregon, which is about 4 hours from where I live. I never go there. And unfortunately, the trend of buying the used tires, it not clicked here. I wasn't real bright, and I had still bought these used tires, and I had another blowout. But this time, it was dark, and it was in the wooded area. Just picture any horror movie. This is how you die, right? This is where I go to die. This is how it happens. And I go, and literally, I'm not joking, there were no exits because I was so out. You ever been there? Next rest stops, 30 miles. I had to go to the side of the road and find a house, and it was dark and creepy. And literally, I thought, this could be it. I need to be right with Jesus. And I knocked on the door, and thank God they let me use their phone. And I, again, got AAA and got towed to a tire shop, and the next morning it got it fixed. But you would think that I would have got the message, but sometimes some things have to happen over and over again before we finally can pick up the message and say enough is enough. And I wonder if some of you today, you're driving around with some bad habits, some used tires, and it's just a matter of time before there's a blowout. There's just a matter of time before something really bad could happen. Thank God for me, none of the situations actually ended up really where I was in danger or I was harmed, but they could have. And I think some of the bad habits that we have could lead us down that road. And over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about how we all have similar goals, yet we reach drastically different results, and why that is. Because no one plans to live paycheck to paycheck and just kind of get by. Nobody plans on becoming, overweight or having poor health and, possibly having a heart attack or dying young and not, being able to spend time with their grandkids. No one plans on getting addicted and losing everything they have, losing their marriage and losing the respect of their kids. No one plans on doing that. You might say, well, Ray, those are pretty extreme situations there. Well, how about this? No one plans on living a mediocre life and just getting by. No one plans on having a passionless, dreams are in my past type of life with no drive, no vision, where all you're left holding at the end of the day is a bag of regrets. No one plans on that. And the truth is, rarely do we end up at the wrong place all at once. What happens, though, is we end up in the wrong place one step, one day, one bad, poor decision at a time. And what happens as a result is people start to summarize our lives or a season of our life with a sentence. Maybe you've said this even before. You say, well, they battled with their weight all their life and they finally died of a heart attack. Or she cheated on him and a year later they were divorced. Or they didn't follow through at their job and they were let go. And it's really not that it happened all at once. It was a span of time that led to this instance that took place, but it can be summarized in a sentence. And we see these summaries even in the Bible. And I want to read one from Judges chapter 16 today. And it's right there in your notes. And it says this in Judges 16, verse 1, one day. Everyone say one day. One day, Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. Kind of a summary statement. Now, Gaza is 25 miles from Samson's hometown of Zorah. I had to look that up. I did not know that. Gaza was the Philistine headquarters, and just so you know, the Philistines were the arch-rival nemesis of Samson. Samson was a man who was incredibly powerful, endued with this supernatural power, literally could wipe out hundreds, thousands of men because of the strength that he had, that God had given him. And he marches right into the enemy's territory where the Philistines are. And you might think, why would he be so stupid to do that, just to go see a prostitute, just to go and, I'll leave it to your kind of imagination there. Why would he do that? Well, that seems so dumb. But yet, don't we do those types of things? Don't we see other people do those types of things? And we think, why on earth did I do that? I knew that it was for something so stupid. But the ramifications were so dangerous. We make decisions all the time in our relationships, in our marriages, in our jobs. And in case you're wondering how far Gaza is from Zorah, I kind of planned it out there. It's 25 miles, which equates to 56,250 steps, because I'm pretty sure Samson wasn't taking an Uber or a Lyft, all right? So 56,250 steps, he walked all the way, one step, one bad habit at a time in the wrong direction. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been asking ourselves some questions, and today we're going to talk a little bit about habits and how we can stop them. But in week one, we said, who do you want to become? Because you got to start with this question. If you don't know who you want to become, it doesn't matter if you set goals, because those goals need to help you achieve and become the person that God's called you to be. Maybe it's being a better father or a more committed follower of Jesus or a kinder person. Maybe you just want to be a better employee, whatever it is. And we use this statement, and we're carrying it throughout all of these messages. Successful people do consistently what other people do occasionally. And I hope by the end of this series that line sticks in your head, that it resonates every time you think about trying to start a new habit or break a habit, that you remember that successful people do consistently what other people do only occasionally. And then in week two, we said it's time that you make your move. You can't stay where you're at forever. I mean, you can. It will just lead to a pretty faithless, not fulfilling, purposeless life. So we've got to make our move. What's the one habit that you need to integrate into your life this year? And today we're going to mix one more component in. Based on who you want to become, what one habit do you need to break? What one habit do you need to break? And I want to read from James chapter 1, verse 21. And it says, so get rid of every filthy habit and all wicked conduct. Get rid of every filthy habit. Submit to God and accept the word that he plants in your hearts, which is able to save you. James knew that there were some habits in our life that are detrimental. We've really only focused on the positive habits, but there's another side to habits that can get you stuck in a rut. They've actually done research in the brain. They see that when we do things over and over, there are grooves, there are ruts that form in our brain. And if we had the wrong habits, I remember Pastor Jacob said this a long time ago, and he said, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Practice makes permanent. So sometimes if we're doing the wrong thing, we can actually be setting ourselves up to fail. So we want to turn this around. What's the one habit today that you need to break, to rid yourselves of? But before you can overcome that wrong habit, you have to first recognize it. And I would say it this way: we cannot defeat what we cannot define. We cannot defeat what we cannot define. So I want you to name one habit. Now you might say, Ray, I got a lot of bad habits, all right? Like if I'm just being honest, I got a lot of, so do I, all right? But you can only pick one. Start with one, because if you start trying to overcome, 20 bad habits, you're gonna have 20 bad habits at the end of the day. But if you can just pick one and you can put all of your energy and your focus and your attention into overcoming this, you can find victory in it. Maybe it's a bad attitude. Maybe it's negative self-talk. That was one for me a couple years ago that I had to memorize some Bible verses so that I could quote those whenever I would say things, because I would say sometimes I'd say it out loud, like, Raymond, you're stupid. Or Raymond, you're so dumb. Or I'd say those things in my mind, and so I had to remember those verses so I could break that habit of negative self-talk. Maybe it's gossip. Maybe you got like the hot news and you just got to let everybody know, okay? As the kids say, you got to spill the tea, all right? Yes, I know. I said that all right. Some of you, I embrace my old manness. Like I lean into it. So I never try and be cool. So when I say things that are cool, it just never comes out cool. Yeah, amen. Thank you. Maybe you have an eating issue. Maybe you eat too much. Maybe you throw up after you eat. Maybe you eat just too much junk food. You got some sort of eating issue. Maybe you have technology addiction. Maybe you got a binge watching Netflix problem. Maybe it's pornography. Maybe it's your phone. Do you know the average person touches their phone 2,617 times in a day? Woo! On the high side, 5,400 times. 5,400 times, that's right. It's a lot. Maybe you got a substance addiction that you need to break. How do we know, though, what our issue is? How do we know maybe what the one habit is? I would say this: if you have people in your life who are godly, God-honoring, and they love you, and they continue to tell you something, especially if you hear it from multiple people, it might be a sign that you need to pay attention to, a red flag to say, you know what, even though I don't think it's a problem, other people continue to tell me it is, maybe I need to evaluate and let God speak to me about that. So my one habit, if you're wondering what I'm trying to stop is screen time. So it's just painful sometimes. I'm under the average, but it's still painful to watch, and see my screen time sometimes. It's just I spent that much time. You ever been scrolling through in 15 minutes, you think, and then it's an hour later, all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, what have I done with my life? So that's my one habit, all right? My one habit. But here's the thing, good habits work a little bit different than bad habits. So let's talk about good habits for a moment. They usually take more time and they're more difficult to start, all right? Because the payoff is in the future. So you get up in the morning, you go outside, and it's cold in Arizona right now, and you're like, I don't want to run. And you don't see the immediate payoff if you run twice, probably even if you run a week. You're not really going to see much of a result. But if you run for 6 months, all of a sudden you're healthier, you feel better, you probably drop some weight, or at least you're in better shape. Or you might say, well, this year I want to go to church. But, your bed is so nice and comfortable. How many have a hard time getting out of bed? Just confession time, all right? Okay, every hand should be up in the air, because I don't know how any of you get out of bed. So God bless you. I have a hard time. But maybe you want to go to church. And the thing is, if you don't go to church one day, you're probably not going to see the effect of it that much one day or another. But over the course of time, if you go every day for a year, you're going to be closer to God. You're probably going to have a stronger marriage. You're going to have peace in your life. You're going to have friends because you're in a community group and around people who love you, all right? Bad habits, they work the exact opposite, all right? There's an immediate payoff, and the negative results are delayed down the road. Sin can be fun in the immediate. How many know that to be true? If you're not raising your hand, you're not doing it right, all right? I'll teach. We just have a class on how to sin after, all right? Okay. Not really, okay. Somebody will come up to me and be like, what'd you say? That'll be the one clip we use on Facebook this week. But you smoke a cigarette, right? And you feel that relief of stress. And it might seem like it helps you in that moment, but 20, 30 years down the line, you have lung cancer. You have a life that's a steady diet of pastries and energy drinks. Some of y'all drinking so many energy drinks. Honestly, I don't know how your heart is still going. I don't understand it. But you're diagnosed years later with diabetes, or your heart gives out. And so last week, we talked about how we can increase our odds of starting a habit. And we said we want to make it obvious, we want to make it easy, and we want to connect it to other habits that we already have in our life. Well, today, we're going to talk about how to break a bad habit, and we're going to do the opposite of what it takes to start a habit. And I'm really just going to give you one main point, and we're going to talk about the different layers of it. And it's this: make it difficult to do. make it difficult to do. The truth is we have a limited amount of willpower. I know certain people that maybe they do have a little more willpower than another, but all of us have a finite amount of willpower. It's just like this. If I go and I run around all day, I expend my energy, it makes sense that I don't have the same amount of energy at that point until I have time to replenish it or rejuvenate so that I can recover, right? So if I'm making decisions all the time, your decisions might be good in the beginning, but if you continually have to make decision after decision after decision, they say there's something called decision fatigue, and your decisions actually get worse at a certain point. So it makes sense that this is a finite resource of willpower. The more you use it, the more it depletes. And so we want to use it wisely and sparingly when possible. So you know this to be true because you can fight off something for a little while. Like you can start eating healthy for a little while, right? Because just pure willpower. Like, I'm just going to do it. Or you can start going to the gym. It's why the gyms are full in January, but they're a lot more empty in February. Because you have enough willpower to start, you don't have enough willpower to sustain. And so habits and realizing how they work are key to helping us. So I have our lovely assistant, James Schaefer, out here who was tickling the ivories a little bit earlier. He's going to bring me some. I love donuts, just so you know.
Thank you.
Look at this guy. He does not eat donuts. Look at these arms, man. This guy's healthy. All right. Give it up for the great James Schaefer. But I love donuts. They are so good. But imagine I'm walking by and I see there's a tray of donuts. Like I don't know that that's going to happen. So I'm just walking by and I look and I'm like, you know what? This year I'm going to eat healthy. Get thee behind me, Satan. Not today. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I'm feeling good. Pass by number 2. I'm just looking at it. I'm like, I remember when we used to be together, donuts. But not anymore. That's who I used to be. I'm leaving you, kicking you to the curb. Then pass by number 3. You're just like, you know, I'm not going to eat any. It's been a long time since I smelled a donut. Those do smell good. I'm not going to lie to you right now. Those smell good, but yeah, I got it. Willpower, baby. I'm strong, right? Pass by number 4. You're like, I ain't going to eat a donut, but I haven't picked up, they're so light and fluffy. I just haven't picked up a donut. Oh, yeah, that's how they feel. That's right. I remember when I used to caress you and hold you and all your friends. Felt so good. I'm just going to put that back here. The next thing you know, you're passing by again, and the tray of donuts is half gone. And all of a sudden, you're wondering what happened. Or maybe you just eat half a donut before noon, and then you eat half a donut the minute after noon, so you can lie to yourself and tell yourself, well, this one was a breakfast side of things, and this one was a lunch. So I didn't really eat a whole donut. But how many know your willpower wanes? And if you keep passing by the donuts, you keep putting yourself in position where you are going to be triggered by something, chances are, after a while, you're going to find your breaking point. Proverbs chapter 4 says this, do not set foot on the path of the wicked, or do not set foot on the path of the donuts, or walk in the way of evildoers. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn from it and go on your way. Repeatedly, the author of this proverb is saying, don't keep passing by that bad habit that's going to destroy your life. So how do we make it difficult to do? We're going to put up a slide up there, and it's the habit loop. We talked about this last week, the habit loop. And there's a few different pieces or components to this. So first you have the cue, or what we would call the trigger, right? And this is kind of when you pass by the donuts, all right? I can't help that the donuts are there, but my cue or trigger might be that I pass by the donuts repeatedly, all right? And then you have what is called the action or the response. This is where I pick up the donut and I begin to eat it. And I really wanted to find a way to justify eating a donut in my message. I just couldn't do it. So you eat the donut, right? And then the reward is the taste or the dopamine hit from whatever habit you have performed. So what we want to do is we want to remove the trigger or the cue, remove the donuts, and we want to short circuit the action. And here's what this might look like. I pass by them the first time, but the next time, because I know I'm not trying to eat those, I walk by a different route and I turn a different way. So instead of staring at the donuts and the temptation that's over there, I'm going to do something different. And you might say, well, that's really hard to do, but chances are you can figure out some way to do this if you will really examine your life. Stop driving by the same places, stop being around the same people, stop doing the same things you always do and expect a different result. They call that insanity. If you really want to grow in your faith, if you really want to break a habit, if there's really something that you're serious about, you're going to have to take a different approach. And there are some major triggers that I want to talk to you. In fact, we did a whole series on triggers a few months ago. You can check it out on our website, compelchurch.com. It's all right there. But I want to talk about really the categories of triggers. There's 5 of them that you can write down in your notes. The first one is the place. There's a place. The second one is time. So there's place and time. The third one is mood. I know none of y'all ever get in moods, but, you know, some people. Moods. The fourth one's a moment. And the fifth one is people. People. So we got the 5 there: place, time, mood, moment, and people. Let's talk a little bit about these. Think about it for a moment. Let's just get hyper practical. You probably don't overeat at the gym, but you probably or tend to overeat if you go to a Super Bowl party. You probably don't get high at church. If you are, then we can just have a conversation later, all right? But you might get high out with your buddies as they go out and, you know, have drinks and then head out afterwards to somebody's home. And then think about the time as well. You probably aren't looking at pornography while you're in the midst of a community group. But you might when it's late at night, when you're bored and you're alone. In fact, in the Bible, David was a man who loved God. Did you know that you can love God and still do stupid stuff? Right? Sometimes we beat ourselves up and we think we don't love God because we've done something stupid. Oh, let me just tell you, there's some people in the Bible filled with stories of people who did stupid things, and this is what David did. And he commits adultery. He's a man who loves God. He's the king. He commits adultery, but it all started with him being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Let's look at 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1. It says, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, he's a king. David sent someone else, Joab, out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. And they destroyed the Ammonites and they besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. He stayed in a place that he shouldn't have been. He stayed where he shouldn't have been at a time that he shouldn't have been there. And the Bible says that he goes up to the rooftop and he notices across the way this nice lady, her name's Bathsheba, and she's bathing. And he doesn't leave the rooftop, he stays there. See, sometimes your sin is not seeing what you see, but it's lingering where you shouldn't be for too long. And so he stays there, and then eventually he summons and has her called over. He sleeps with her. And to cover it all up, he actually sends her husband off to war where he'd be killed in battle. Wrong place, at the wrong time, and it cost him dearly, and it cost many around him dearly. For many of us, there's a consistent place, and there's a consistent time that triggers us, and we're going to start removing those triggers from our life. Let's talk about mood, because I told you, none of y'all get in a mood, but some people get in a mood, and you might know some people. You might be sitting next to somebody, don't look at them wrong, because they'll be in a mood after that, okay? But you have a mood, right? And they recommend, experts say, you know, what you need to do is you need to halt, and that halt stands for something. It stands, ask yourself 4 questions. Are you hungry? Anyone get irritable when they're hungry? I do, yes. Daniel knows what I'm talking about down there. Okay, when you're hungry. When am I angry? Am I angry? If you really have a problem, if you're hungry and you're angry, you're hangry, okay? You got real issues going on. Am I lonely or am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? In any combination thereof. If you see these signs in your life, then it's best probably to remove ourselves from the situation because you're about to probably make a poor decision. If you try and make decisions when those things are going on, and some of you are like, I'm always hungry. Just have food with you all the time, all right? It's like my teenagers. They're just always eating our food, all right? So you're probably more prone to make bad decisions. And then there's moments. Something happens, and it triggers you to do something. You fight with your husband, so you call your girlfriends and you start to bash your husband. Or guys, you get in a fight and you call your guy friends and you start bashing her. You go out for a softball game, and afterwards you go out for drinks at the bar and you have a problem drinking, and so you drink too much. You pass a test, and so you celebrate by smoking pot. You flunk a test, and so you're down, so you celebrate by smoking pot. You skip the test, and you smoke pot. And the moral of the story is you have a pot problem, all right? All right? But moments, they trigger certain things. So we're paying attention to the place, the time, the mood, and the moment, and we're going to distance ourselves from those things that trigger us. That makes sense? You guys with me? All right? So this next one, though, is the one that I always get the most pushback on. Always. It's people. People. The wrong people can be triggers that, watch this, will either lead us down the right or the wrong path. Who you surround yourself is incredibly important. Studies are conclusive. Year after year, they prove the same thing. In fact, one study, it looked at 12,000 people over the span of 32 years. That's a pretty intense study. And they found that we become and take on the habits of the people who are closest to us. Just to kind of give you a snapshot so you can understand this, they said if you're obese, you have obese friends, you are 57% more likely to be obese yourself. If you are a friend with somebody who's losing weight, you are 1/3 more likely just because they're losing weight. Why? Because you're picking up on their habits. And how much does that apply to us in the spiritual realm as well? If you are around people who never talk about God, you're around people who don't understand why you go to church, don't understand why you read your Bible, don't believe in the power of prayer, don't you think that after a while that's going to rub off on you? You just heard Dawn talk about it. It rubs off. People rub off on us. This is so important for us to understand. Proverbs 13:20, though, it really summarizes it the best. Walk with the wise and become wise. For a companion of fools suffers harm. You want to live a good life, a wise life? Get around people who love Jesus, who honor God with their lives. I think about my closest friends in life, especially since the time I became a Christian 25 years ago. All of them, all of my closest friends love God, have a relationship with Him. All of them go to church. All of them serve often. All of them believe in living a generous life. All of them live within or beneath their means. They have great families. They are good friends. And if you just think about it for a moment, it's much more likely and much easier for me to live the life that God wants me to live when I'm around that environment. Now, I want you to think how difficult it would be to live the life that God's called you to live if your closest friends are doing drugs. Your closest friends are addicted to video games. Your closest friends are always partying and getting drunk. Imagine how hard it would be if your closest friends are always gossiping, are always negative, are always tearing other people down. Imagine how hard it would be for me to live, or you to live, a God-honoring life if that was the input that we're consistently getting. It's almost impossible. I want you to remember this statement. It's almost impossible to live the right life with the wrong friends. It doesn't mean this. It doesn't mean that we aren't friends with all sorts of people. It doesn't mean that we live in our holy huddle where no one can be around us. What it does mean is you don't give the same level of access to every single person in your life. We need to be a light in a darkened world. We say that at Compel. We want to bring hope and healing to a hurting world. But we have to be careful who we give the keys to our life, to our heart. 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be misled. Please remember this verse. Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Every single time. It corrupts good character. Given enough time, those habits begin to rub off. You may not need to end a friendship today, but you may need to redefine some relationships today so that you really can continue on in your walk with God. So we have triggers. We say we want to remove the trigger. We want to interrupt, short circuit the action. What does this look like for you? How many of y'all hit snooze button in the morning, all right? Some of you have a hard time getting out of bed. You hit the snooze button. Maybe instead of hitting the snooze button 4 times, what you're going to do is you're going to take your phone and you're going to set it in a different part of your room, so you have to get up out of your nice, warm, comfortable bed to turn off your alarm. I used to have to do this, and I'm not joking. That was how hard it was for me to get up out of bed. But you're helping yourself. You're short-circuiting. You're making it difficult. Maybe you overspend on Amazon, so you're going to give your password to a friend. You can still buy stuff, but every time you want to buy something, you have to text your friend so that they can put in the password every single time. Now, don't give it to a friend who has a problem spending on Amazon, because that's not going to be good for you either. Or maybe you look at inappropriate images on your phone. I'm just going to say this is probably one of the most prevalent things. I love technology, but when it's not used well and it's not used rightly, it can be one of the most damaging, detrimental things to every person's life. And you've been looking at things, and you just need to be honest. You just need to say, you know what? I'm going to give away my password to other people, so I can't access certain things unless I go to them. Or I'm going to, maybe if you're married, listen, if you're married and your spouse doesn't have the right to go on your phone anytime they want, you ought to change that. You ought to change that for the sake of your marriage, because it's too precious. It's too important. It's too important. You know, it's, well, that's private. No, you're in it together. You're one. That's what the Bible says. And if you say, well, I can work around all of it, and I can get around it, then you love Jesus so much to say, you know what, I don't need a smartphone. I'll go to a dumb phone, because my relationship with God's more important than this stupid thing. No one's getting to the end of their life and saying, you know what, I made it to heaven and I had a smartphone. People are going to want to get to heaven and say, you know what, I made it to heaven and I honored my wife. I honored my family. I honored those people around me. If you have a severe problem, this really just goes beyond what I've really been talking about, you're going to take a greater measure. If you have an addiction to gambling or drugs or alcohol, sexual addiction, you might need to go see a counselor. You might even need to go into rehab. And some of you, maybe you've been in here and you've had this problem for a lot of years, 20, 30 years. And you keep thinking you got it under control, but deep down you know you need help. God has put people on this earth to give you the tools to help you and the resources to help you, so you don't have to live in bondage. You can live in freedom. Why resist temptation tomorrow if I have the power to eliminate it today? Why keep passing by the donuts when I could just take another route? The habits you have today will shape who you will become tomorrow. Do you like the direction your habits are taking you? Chances are you like some habits and you don't like others. I think all of us would say there are some habits we would rather not have in our life. And if you're not sure about those bad habits, then just play it forward. Look at your negative habits and think about where it will lead you. Because is it going to lead you to a place where you're saying one day, I wish somebody had just slapped me upside the